Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Downtime Podcast Live. Thanks again for joining us. I'm going to be chatting this evening with Cy Turner of Cotic Bikes. So if you've got any questions for him, then put them in the comments bit over there, the live chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. If you're enjoying what we're doing, then please give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well. And also check out all of our audio podcasts over on downtimepodcast.com and get subscribed to those too. There's 150 for you over there with all sorts of athletes, people from the brands that make these awesome bikes for us. So go over and check those out. All right, it's time to welcome this evening's guest. So yeah, Cy Turner, welcome to Downtime Live.
All right, Chris, how's it going?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. Yeah, this is weird. I'm used to I've been on the podcast a couple of times, and I'm used to sort of going straight into it. But this is this feels different.
It is a bit different, and we're normally in the same room as well. We don't live that far. You're about an hour away from me, aren't you? So
yeah, this is true actually. Yeah, this is the first one we've done remotely.
yeah. Well, yeah. So lockdown. Where are you at the moment? Tell everyone where you are.
I am in the bedroom that Cotic grew out of. So Cotic started Cotic started in Nottingham before I moved up to Sheffield. But when I moved to Sheffield 13 years ago, this little front bedroom is our little spare bedroom was my office, still is my office. But I just and I'm back in it all the time now. Up and last few years I've been down at HQ quite a bit as well. But yes, I'm working from home, but although it's a change, it's something I've done before, so I'm sort of quite set up for it.
Fair play. And how's lockdown treating you? Because you've got a young family, and I'm guessing they're not at school at the moment.
No, they're not that young, which is I think seems to be the key difference. Both my kids are at senior school, so actually the school's still setting them almost a full timetable.
Okay.
The school had an online homework thing, which they've now rolled out to just do the curriculum. So Lauren was telling me that she's been off school because they closed half the school before lockdown because they had staffing problems. My eldest has been off for 50 days, she told me today. 50 days since she left school. But it's really good because it gets some structure. They start school about 9:30 in the morning and they're done by kind of mid-afternoon. They're actually doing really well. My friends who've got primary school kids are having to work quite hard, which is so I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate in a lot of ways, but that's one of the ways that is the case.
Fair play. And how have you been approaching riding then? Because you've got sort of fairly good access to trails from where you live.
Yeah. I mean, I can see Totley Moor from my bedroom, and I'm off road 40 seconds from my house. So the reason why I moved up here has meant that it's been brilliant. That said, I've actually been riding my gravel bike a lot because as a result of being close to the access, West Sheffield's right on the edge of the peak. A lot of people have walkable or rideable access to that, so physical distancing can be a bit tricky at times. So I've been actually out on my gravel bike the opposite direction, down stuff that I don't tend to mountain bike on that much because it's a little bit dull and it's a lot of quiet roads. But actually, in the nice weather at the moment, it's been absolutely perfect. It's actually been really refreshing because I've been going out just for shorter rides. Just in civvies, first time in years I've done that. Just literally, just helmet, gloves, go, and just go out for an hour. It's been really nice. It's been quite a different thing rather than just all the faff of getting your kit on and being a mountain biker.
Yeah, fair play. And what about your other hobbies? Because people might not know about some of the other things you're into. Have they been getting some attention?
My RC cars have been getting a lot of attention.
I can see one over your shoulder there.
Yeah, this is my current favourite.
Nice.
So this is my favourite ever rally car shell, which you can't get for love nor money. And then a British company, did a reproduction like about 6 months ago. So I bought it and I bought a chassis to go on it. That's a front wheel drive touring car chassis. And yeah, just like tinkering with them. That's got a few 3D printed parts that I designed myself and stuff like that because, I can't put stuff down.
Why not, eh? Why not? And a bit of Lego as well.
Yeah, a bit of Lego. That's those. Yeah, that's original like 80s vintage stuff from when I was a kid. And then yeah, there's actually there's this bad boy which I did rebuild.
Whoa.
So that was my 40th birthday present from you lot.
It was indeed. Yeah, it's a good gift that.
Yeah.
We did all right for once.
That's the B model, so I did rebuild that as well. So yeah, so the other stuff's been getting a bit of attention.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about bikes then. You've just launched a new bike, the Rocket Max, or the Gen 3 of the Rocket Max.
Yeah.
What possessed you to launch a bike in the middle of a global pandemic?
Well, obviously we've been planning it before the pandemic turned up. And basically we had to. It was finished. We stopped production on the Gen 2. We'd ramped up production on this ahead of the launch.
Yeah.
So we had to, otherwise we couldn't sell any bikes, and Fiveland were making them. So, and it's gone down really well. I think, people are still wanting stuff to read and look at, and in terms of their hobbies, and and bikes. Bikes are a big part of that. And we haven't been able to do the usual thing of getting first rides involved or getting the media involved quite as much as we'd ideally like. But in terms of response and general, sort of noise that we've made, I've been super happy with it, given that, like I say, we've basically done it. Rich has been shooting stuff completely on his own, like having to set up the temporary studio on his own, and like not get in the way of Will, the mechanic, and and I've had to build photo bikes because we can't have two people in the workshop at the same time. So it's it's been a bit of work, but yeah, it's basically the answer is we had to. So that was that.
Yeah, and I'm a lucky recipient of one of those early bikes. I think I've got a photo. There we go. There's a photo on the screen there for people to see. So that's my new build, and unfortunately, due to a lack of rim tape, I've not actually been able to get it rolling yet. I've not even managed to roll it around the street. So hopefully tomorrow some rim tape will arrive and I can take it out in the street, check it all works, and then do a dawn mission to some nearby woods for a gentle shakedown. So that would be interesting. But yeah, I'm excited for that. Well, we've got plenty of questions that have been coming in over social media for the last few days. So we'll hit a few of those. Let's hit some of the ones about the Rocket Max stuff first. So Cleric wants to know, old Rocket Max versus new, were comparison tests done on the hill, or were the changes you wanted to make obvious?
They weren't obvious, and they weren't. One of the things that was... So the changes we've made to the bike is we've gone to a longer metric shock, which creates a packaging problem on our bikes because the shock reaches to the down tube. And the new metric shock, we were using a 200 by 57 stroke shock, and now we've had to go to a 230 by 63, 62 and a half. And that's a big change in length. So packaging it on the smaller frames changes the rate. It reduces the progression, basically. So we had to figure out whether that was something we wanted. And actually, from the experience with the Flare Max of reducing the progression rate a bit to increase the range of tunability for more rider weights, we knew we kind of wanted to go that way. So it was just a matter of trying it. So actually it was more on so even though the change was kind of pushed on us by the industry changing, it was much more of a feel thing this time. It was what, is this the feel we want from this bike? Is this the performance we want from this bike? And actually that kind of softer edge, kind of deeper, plusher feel of the slightly more linear rate, the slightly lower leverage, the big can shock, the extra travel, we realized it's actually more in keeping with what people expect from a big enduro bike. The Gen 2 Rocket was quite punchy. It didn't feel like it had tons and tons of travel, but that gave it that real like lift and life. And this definitely has a slight softer edge to it, so it's better in certain situations, like just sort of flat out rocky sections and stuff like that. But the thing is if you like that punchier feel, you can just put volume spacers in. Whereas previously you got that punchy feel with no volume spacers, so if you did want to soften it off, you kind of had nowhere to go. So that's why we moved in this direction a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. What about the change to 160mm from 150 before?
That again was just kind of it was part of the repackaging process. We knew we had to go to this shock, so what did it do to the frame? Because we wanted to maintain the dynamic geometry of the bike, because it's only been out 18 months, and I absolutely love the way it handles. I just needed to package this new shock, so that was kind of came out of all of the trade-offs of the reduction in progression, but the increase in stroke, and all of these kind of things came together, and then we ended up with, a 160mm bike, and that just meant, and the only real trade-off we had to make was make the seat angle just a touch steeper to push the rider a bit further forward when seated, because when you have So I'll try and explain this. So when you're riding up a real steep climb, your weight tips backwards.
Yeah.
And if the bike's less progressive, it's going to sag more into its travel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to have as much support to your weight transferring backwards. So you need to just push the rider just a bit further forward just to keep that balance. Okay. So that was where that came from.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. We've got a couple of questions here from Gibbon. Good name. First question is, would there be Fiveland without Cotic? So you might have to explain what Fiveland is. And the second question, would UK-made Cotics be possible without Fiveland?
Okay, so would Fiveland? Probably, because they do have other customers other than us. They're just not as big. But they've had as soon as they announced, I know that they've had a ton of people ask them if they can do frames, and at the moment they can't because they're at capacity doing the stuff that they're doing at the moment for us and a couple of others. So no, Matt and Callum were definitely going to do it. What Cotic did was me saying, right, if we run the numbers and these are the prices and this looks good, like commercially for Cotic, I will take, a few hundred a year off you. Yeah. Because we know what our volumes are. So what we was a ready-made steady income stream for them, rather than doing, lots and lots of smaller stuff. They knew that if they had us as a customer, they could fill the workshop for a good proportion of the year. Therefore, they were willing to take the punt.
Yeah, makes sense.
And just to explain, Fiveland are our subcontract frame builder in the UK. They're based up in just west of Edinburgh.
Good bit of geography there.
Well, I always come at it from the opposite direction, so I'm always travelling east. They're in this beautiful old dairy farm in a place called Balerno, which is like you drive for like 7 or 8 minutes and you're properly in the suburbs of Edinburgh, like full urban, and yet the place they're at feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. It's amazing. It's really cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice.
And could we do it without Fiveland? Maybe. There are a few other options. It would be a lot harder. We tried quite expensively and painfully to do it ourselves with another business about 6-7 years ago now, which didn't come off. So I know how hard it is. So I'm very, very thankful for Matt and Callum to just bring all that expertise to their table and let me just buy frames at the end of it, which is so no, I'm very grateful for that. The answer is probably, but not as quick as we've managed it.
Yeah, they're doing a good job up there. And So Erigy wants to know, why have you chosen to make the Rocket Max frames in the UK and other bikes in Taiwan?
It's simply a capacity thing. Because they were starting up, Matt and Callum said, right, we have, at Fiveland said, like, we have this level of capacity. And that was basically, that was 2 model lines. And so that was that. And also the thing that we did wrong when we tried to do it previously in the UK was we went all in for the UK and then didn't pull it off. And we'd been and the rocket was out of production for like 2.5 years because we didn't keep stuff coming in from Taiwan. So partly it's capacity and partly it's not having all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, all right, good answer. Another question then around the newer bikes. Glob Coppard wants to know, can you run a coil shock on a Rocket Max?
New one, no.
Okay.
No.
What's the thinking from your side there?
So partly it's we've had some issues with the Gen 2 bike with the coil shocks, mainly to do with the fact that because of the progression rate on our bikes, you need a much stiffer spring than people expect. So people have been putting too soft a spring on them or not setting them up quite right. Even with the best advice that we've hoped to give them, they've not had a good time on them. Mm-hmm. I'll hold my hands up. In a couple of cases, we've had frame failures, and ultimately, we couldn't replicate that in testing.
Right.
So it's never the shock's problem. It's always the frame manufacturer's problem.
Yeah.
So basically we've had to come back to the point where we're saying, this is what we know. This is what's safe. This is what works brilliantly. This is what we understand. Because ultimately, there's only me and a couple of the other guys actually, doing the ride development, and it's mostly me. Mm-hmm. So I can't ride every shock out there and say, yes, this is definitely safe on our bike.
Yeah.
And the flip side of it is that only one person in the whole company runs a coil shock. All the rest of us prefer air shocks because of the tunability and the lower weight. And that big can air shock that we've got on that new bike is so plush. It just feels like, so low pressure. It's so unstressed. It's got that feel that people are looking for, but we know that it's going to work with the bike.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had to back off the progression rate on this bike as well, just to give the feel that we wanted, sort of lent us a little bit further away from the coil shock. So at the moment we're saying it's air shock only. It's this shock because that's what we've developed it for. It works brilliantly, so use that. We're not saying never. In fact, I was only emailing one of the engineers at Cane Creek today to talk through this. So, but until we can fully understand it, we can't say we can't say go for it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think a lot of people don't realise how small the operation is, right? The engineering is pretty much you.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things are you as well. So it's like, fitting it all in.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I know people are like super excited about coil at the moment, and but genuinely that these big can air shocks are a different thing. It's not like the shocks of like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
So we genuinely feel this is the best shock for the bike. It's not just us going, oh no, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. That. All right. So based on that, Lee Mallow says, should I probably change my coil shock to an air shock then from my rocket? My CCDB coil feels amazing on the frame.
Yeah, the DB coils feel great. I mean, I have run one, but the only time I ever felt that there was a genuine feel advantage was when I was riding slow speed technical climbs. That was the only time when I could feel the sensitivity.
Interesting.
Once they actually got going, it just didn't make a difference. And this is between the inline air shock and the DB air is another thing. The big can shock is another thing again. No, if you've got a previous generation bike, you don't necessarily have to change, but do make sure it's the right stiffness spring. Do make sure that it's set up properly. Do make sure that you're running, enough high-speed compression damping, based on our base tune. And if you do fancy a change, have a look at one of these big can shocks. I don't think you'll regret it.
All right, good advice. So Mark Snook, I think, must have one of the older Rocket Maxes. He says, can you change a linkage or shock size on the older Rocket Max to go to 160?
No, because it's not a linkage. The rear end is pretty much identical. It's all about the shock mount is a different shape and it's in a totally different position on the down tube. I tested it on my Gen 2 bike by running a shock mount with bits filed out of it and held on with 2 bolts, which is fine. Which is fine for me, and I'm insured and I know what I'm doing. But that won't meet the ISO standards.
You're not recommending that?
No, that's not recommended.
All right, fair enough. Right, let's pick another question. So Trailvolution wants to know, why don't you go for even more reach on the long shot bikes and a steeper seat angle for less effective top tube?
So the reason why we don't go for more reach is because we've tried it and we felt it was too much. The combination of the reason why we're really happy with the long shot bikes is it's the first time with geometry since this whole project since I started doing the bikes that really made me think out of the box and really made me push myself. And I just kept going until it was bad, and then came back from there. So an XL frame with a 515 reach is as long as I want it, and I'm 1.89 m, so I'm pretty tall. I mean, I guess if you're a bit taller, you may want some more room, but I've got I've not got my saddle slammed all the way back on the rails or anything like that. So the reason why we don't go longer is because we've been longer, we've been slacker, we don't like it, we've come back to where we are now, because we're happy with that. The reason why we don't do steeper seat angles is because we don't like them in terms of how comfortable they are for longer rides. So like super steep seat angles are great if you're just riding up super steep, you're winching up something super steep or techie and then just plummeting straight back down again. That's absolutely fine. But if you need to do like a long seated climb, you can't sit off your shoulders and your wrists. You're in like a half press up position the whole time. And like, we were talking about me being 40 seconds off road from my house. My local loop that I did this afternoon, once I've dropped down to the bottom of the hill and crossed the road and I'm in the woods, it takes me about 25 minutes to ride to the top of the moor. That is a long time to be sat holding yourself up on your pecs and your shoulders.
Yeah.
You can't sit off. If your seat angle's super steep, you can't sit in for a climb. Like Golfy, when we go Golfy, how long is that climb? It's like that long road climb is like, it's a steady spin, but you want to be able to sit off and just twiddle, don't you?
Yeah, it's most of your day out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the reason we try and strike and our seat angles are a lot steeper than they were like 2-3 years ago. So we're definitely sort of we're not kind of closed to it, but we're not just going to do it just because it's trendy. We do it because we only move to a point that we're happy to ride.
Okay.
So we would much rather have the ability to sit off for longer climbs because we feel that's what most people do more of the time. And then if you have to scooch forward a little bit for steep technical climbs, well, we've kind of always had to do that. Yeah.
All right. I buy that. Makes sense. One more on the full sus bikes. So Blue Boogaloo 1 wants to know, why do you use aluminium for the rear end on the full sus bikes?
We use aluminium for the swing arm. The main reason for that is optimizing it for our production partner in Taiwan. I did prototype a steel swing arm. I have made one. It's a similar weight to the aluminium. It's really good performance, but because of our linkage, where our pivot is with the brake boss, it is super fiddly to make in that area if you fabricate it, or it's super expensive to machine a piece of steel in a similar way to the aluminium bit. So basically, it's doable in steel, but the aluminium is a better solution for the people who make the back ends, because the swing arm heads are a great big forging, so they're just like, they come out near net shape and they're nice and stiff, and they move out of the way of everything, and we've got the integrated chain guide mounts and all of that kind of stuff. So it just works really well for that situation.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about business a little bit. So rather than the bikes, more the business side of things. Francois Terre Blanche, lovely name, would like to know, how did you get over the fear of starting your first business?
There was no fear, because there was no plan. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was so. If I'd have even thought about it remotely deeply, there probably would have been some fear. But there wasn't, because it was almost the opposite question. So I prototyped the Soul because I had a chance introduction to Brant Richards, and he said, actually, because I sent him a full CAD drawing rather than a fag packet sketch, because that's the sort of occupational hazard for people like us, is that you get like, I've got this brilliant idea for a bike, and it's just crayons on the back of a so I sent him a full production drawing, because I was just going to get one made by Dave Yates, a custom frame builder, for my own amazement, and that'd have been that. But he said, hey, this is pretty good. This we could get you 100 of these. So anyway, he got me a prototype, and people rode it, and people really liked it. And Kelvin, my friend Kelvin, who's still our web and graphics guy, could do us a website, and my other friend Niall could take some photos and do us a logo. And I'd pay them in bike bits. And because we've always been internet direct, I've always run it from my front bedroom. It was almost like I could get a loan and start the company almost just for the crack, because it was like, because I was in a pretty decent earning job. I didn't have kids at that point. And it was like, if we sold 3 of these, I think I could just about afford to pay back the loan anyway. And it's not like we're only going to sell 3. Yeah. So it almost became like, why wouldn't we do it? So, yeah.
Fair enough. No messing about there. All right. This is another business related one, Gavin Ireland. How does Si manage as the leader and the engineer and the designer, especially when you want to get an alternative or an independent view when making decisions, be those engineering or business decisions?
That is the hardest bit, and that is the bit that I really miss from my previous job. It's still weird to talk about my old job, because I left in 2006. But I used to work for a small railway engineering consultancy, and one of my favourite things that I've ever done in my working life would be the project startup meetings, where they would just get who's involved in the project, and then just a bunch of other engineers and designers, and we'd all sit in a room and drink too much coffee and scribble on the whiteboard with the spec for like 3 hours. And there was hand waving and scribbling, and that's stupid and that's awesome, and it was just the nicest thing. It was so creative, and I don't get that very much anymore. So I do miss that. What I have is I have some good people around me. So business wise and engineering wise, I quite often talk to Chris. To be honest, he's one of my oldest friends, and he was, before podcasts, he was a really, really, really good engineer.
No, I'm not sure about that.
So I chat to Chris. Paul at Cotic he's not got any formal qualifications in that way, but he's an amazing, like, intuitive technical guy. Like, quite a few of the ideas for solutions on our bikes, like the seat stay pivot on the drop link bikes, that's his, to name but one. But he's really, really good. There's a couple of people I chat to, and I have had a business mentor. Quite often talk to my dad. He was a small businessman for 20 years. I've got other friends who are pretty high up in marketing and other bits and pieces of other industries, this industry. I've got a good network of people.
Yeah, network, I think, is the key thing, isn't it? If you haven't got the people within the business, you need to know people that can offer you advice and talk to you about that stuff. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the production, on the technical side, my agent in Taiwan has a CAD designer,
Hmm.
so he back models all of my drawings. So we always get a sense check that way. So I've got even though I've not got people employed who do that kind of thing, I've got people in my corner who help me out.
Yeah, good. All right. MTB Max would like to know what is the key to competing against the big bike brands?
If you find out, let me know.
Do you aim to compete? I guess that's the key thing, isn't it?
It depends what you say by compete. I mean, I don't want to. I genuinely don't want Cotic to get to a point where there's like 100 people here and we're selling 50,000 bikes a year. I don't. That's not in the vision for me.
Hmm.
Um, I want to know. I'd like Cotic to be bigger and I'd like to sell more bikes, but only to the point of it being a slightly bigger version of what it is now. Um, so in terms of competing, in terms of product, um, we do our own thing and we do it authentically and we do it with diligence and we just try and make the best bikes we can make and we try and make the bikes we really want to ride because ultimately that's what the soul was. I did lose, and I sort of lost track of that a little bit in the middle somewhere for a little while, and that was, and because we're small, we can be bold.
Yeah.
Like geometry is beginning to catch up. Some of the big boys are doing geometry, which isn't far off ours now, but it took them a couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, our first long shot bike was in summer 2017. Um, so that's one. Just and the work I did with business mentors and friends and marketing, learning more about marketing and brand is the other thing that guides me is understanding what Cotic is, what is a Cotic, what isn't a Cotic. Um, that's really important because ultimately that's what it is. That's what it needs to be.
Yeah, you've created a very strong brand, definitely, and actually, it kind of nicely goes on to the next question. We had a few people asking about this, but Kevin Robbins has asked in the live chat. He says, "Hi, Si. Why have you decided to change the logo?"
Because I I mean, ultimately, it's my decision. But also we, because it is a group thing. We didn't feel that it represented what we wanted Cotic to project as a brand anymore. And to be honest, I've felt that for some time, but it's so hard to redo a head badge, like a brand logo,
Yeah.
that um, that it's always gone either into the too hard bin or we've got other things to do bin. But we actually went like last September. It was like, right, no, we're doing this. We're going to change it up. We're going to find something, and you would not believe the amount of work. I mean, it took us easily 6 months.
And this is all in
And
house, right? You've not gone out to a marketing agency or a design
no,
agency,
no, because we've tried that before, and you just get crap because they don't understand what the brand is.
right?
Um, we got we the only external help was a graphic designer who we gave some ideas to, um, who knew of the brand a bit. Um, she's a friend of Hannah who works here, so she she worked under a bit of direction from all of us to get a to get some concepts somewhere near where we were going. Um, and that really helped. That really helped, and just being really collaborative about it. We just sat all eight of us just in the office at Carver and just got the crayons out, and I was printing stuff off, printing paper stickers off, and and Pritt sticking them to head tubes, and you've got to try all this stuff. So, but ultimately, in the end, it came down to Darren, our new demo guy, was a graphic designer in a previous life. So he he finished it off, and he did a load of like subtly different options until we really sort of drilled into what it was that we wanted.
What's the response been like? Because it's fairly new, right? The new Rocket was the first bike with it on.
Yeah. So what, 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Broadly, it's been positive. There's been a lot of noise of like long-term fans being upset about it, but you're always going to get that because they feel an ownership with the brand, which is awesome. And I'm sorry I've upset them, but I'm so thankful that they feel that affinity with the brand.
Yeah.
But I'm taking with one hand and punching them with the other now. But ultimately, it's mine. so I get to choose.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that on the head badge anymore. I wanted it to be more about place and what I felt about being outside and being on my bike.
Mm-hmm.
And broadly, it's a representation of the gritstone edges you can see from our workshop.
Yeah.
That was where the idea came from. That was where the rough idea or the rough concept that I came up with was, when I just need 5 minutes, I walk outside and I look up, and that's what I see. And you can ride up there now, and and then the other bits were filled in by the other people, and some bits, and it just kind of evolved from that. But that was it.
Yeah.
It's where we are. It's what we do. It's us.
Fair play. All right. The next chunk of questions I've titled questions that we always ask, Si, because there's a few things that we ask you quite a lot, and they've all come up, which is really good. The first one of those is from Cesar Ferrari. Again, that's an awesome name. Yeah. When can we expect e-bikes with steel frames? Is Cotic thinking about it?
Okay, we are thinking about it. We're definitely. I like e-bikes. I think they're a fun thing. It's a different part of the sport. I don't know whether it'll be steel initially, because one of the big development costs for a small brand is packaging the thing, and they're just designed for big aluminium tubes. Ultimately, if you've got a battery that big, making it out of steel is going to make it ride like a bag of nails. Well, it's going to ride like a pneumatic drill, because it'll be so stiff and so heavy having a steel tube that big.
Yeah.
Because you can't do the small, the small section high stiffness thing. You just end up with a massive section. So it's just much more suited to a different material. I do have a couple of mental steel frame ideas about
good
them.
mental.
Oh, I think they're awesome mental. But I sent one concept to one of my fabricators in Taiwan, and they didn't even respond. Normally they send me a really high price if they don't want to do something, so they really don't want to do it if they just don't respond. Excellent. They're like, no. So I don't know. Maybe that'll be something I'll bend Matt and Callum about, but they won't like it.
But watch this space then on e-bikes.
Watch this space. Yeah, we will do an e-bike at some point. We just will.
Yeah. All right. This is the one I think you probably get the most often from us. So Ian McIntosh and Bike Riding Allard both want to know, will you ever consider making a downhill bike? And Ian's added, not necessarily for financial reasons, but for exposure and validation of the platform at the highest level, or just for shits and giggles?
No. I know you guys would think it would be fun, and Babe desperately wants one, but I have played with it in the past. DropLink doesn't actually lend itself as a platform to going much longer travel than we currently do. Because of the way the shock's actuated, you'd need to go to a different thing. And yeah, downhill, ultimately, it's too much money on not a big enough return in terms of marketing, and you just don't make any money selling downhill bikes. That's it. That's ultimate. It's a commercial decision. The numbers don't add up.
Yeah,
it would be rad, but it just the amount of engineering effort and versus the return on investment just isn't there.
Okay, fair enough. Next question then is from Owlbell 2020. Any plans for a Cotic kids bike?
No, nothing. Well, nothing like dedicated. We have adapted bikes. My daughter rides a extra small sole with 26-inch wheels and short cranks, and it did have 24-inch wheels in it. So it's possible to make quite small bikes for kids around 9 or 10 maybe. And I got a couple of super custom soles made by our Taiwanese partners for my kids, which are now within some friends of mine, and my brother-in-law's got one. But they just would, to do it really Cotically they would be quite expensive. And I know people spend a lot of money on kids' bikes at the moment, but to do it really, really well, you need all the tiny parts and all of the little things like that. And ultimately, for that kind of stuff, Isla Bikes is just brilliant. I know that they're quite expensive, but man, you get what you pay for. They're just so good.
Fair enough. All right. And then Boris Grillet would like to know, is there a Mullet version of the Rocket being worked on?
No. See also our podcast last summer.
Well, I mean, there's definitely increasing amounts of noise about Mullet bikes, right? There's, I think, rumours that Specialized have got a Mullet kind of shorter travel bike coming out, and there's still a lot to play for on that side of things. I mean, we did some time testing, didn't we, last summer? And I was, I would say, significantly, but noticeably quicker on a 29er, even though I didn't feel it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess it's horses for courses, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I don't think we'd end up doing a dedicated Mullet bike. I think we're hearing a lot of noise about it because the downhillers are making a lot of noise about it. But I get that, because for those shorter riders, a 200 mil travel or more travel 29er is just going to run into your backside the whole time. They're not going to have as much ability to move on the bike. Yeah. So, and the testing, and part of that testing we did, I put a 29er 120 mil fork and 29er front wheel in a Rocket, a 27.5-inch bike. Mm-hmm. And it was significantly faster than the 160 mil 27.5-inch bike.
Yeah.
So clearly most of the advantage of 29-inch wheels in terms of rollover and all of that comes from the front wheel.
Yeah.
So it feels to me like the guys in the World Cup with that massive amount of travel are going back to the shorter guys are going back to the 27.5-inch rear, because they're getting almost all of the performance in terms of, pure performance, if you like, but they've got more room to move and they've got more room to bring their performance to the table.
Yeah.
Their talent and their ability.
Yeah.
So I get that. But once you're even down to 160 mil bikes, even really quite short people can ride them pretty effectively. So I mean, Katie Winton's 5'2"?
Yeah, not tall, shorter than me.
Yeah, and she's on a full 29er. And even just within Cotic, I mean, Sam the demo man's 5'7", rides a small Rocket Max with no issues at all. So yeah, it just, again, it's sort of the downhill bike answer. The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Don't think it's quite there for the kind of bikes we make.
Yeah. All right. Fair comment. I've got another section of questions here. I've been putting them all into themed areas, and there was a big chunk of people asking about the Solaris Maxx and whether there's a new one coming. I don't know where they're getting their information from. Maybe it's just because you've not had, maybe you're low on stock. I don't know.
We've been really low on stock, and we've been out of mediums for months.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got another batch coming in about 6 weeks. But broadly it's the same. There's the minor tweak, new colours, but it's not got whole new geometry or anything crazy like that. It's it's a minor it's a minor thing.
Yeah, you guys don't really do model years. You've always kind of done like an iterative approach or a freshen up of colours and an opportunity to make some tweaks. Was that a conscious thing from your side?
No, not at all. No, it's just the way we've always worked, and model years just don't work for us at all. Like the thought of just trying to predict how many you're going to make of something for a year, coming up short, discounting everything, and then getting a massive glut of new things. I mean, it just seems mental. I can't believe more people don't do it. Um, so yeah, we just update stuff as we feel it needs update. And again, it comes down to the me being the guy doing most of the work. I don't have the bandwidth to renew the entire model line every year or every 2 years. I need to work on each individual project as it goes.
Yeah.
And we go in stock cycles as well. We just get certain we've got certain minimum batches, and on slower selling lines that lasts a certain amount of months. On faster selling lines that lasts a lower amount, a smaller period of time. So it just doesn't make any sense at all. And I think to be honest, I think it's a bit dishonest. Just like artificially holding back and like I say, just the massive discounts you get in the summer when which is awesome for the consumer, but I think it's bad for those guys who bought that bike 6 months earlier in good faith.
Yeah, it's always a tricky time, isn't it?
And and we do discounts, so we're as guilty of it as anyone up to a point, because if we do suddenly find that we've got a new drop coming in, we do have to clear stuff out, but hopefully we try and do it at not too crazy a price. So it happens to all of us, I guess. So yeah, that was a little bit foot in mouth, but but
it's a tricky one. You can't avoid it, otherwise you'll never progress.
Yeah, exactly. We don't do it on an industrial scale.
Yeah. All right. The next chunk of questions is entitled 26 inch. First question: is 26 inch dead? 26
is a state of mind, man. No, it's not dead. Of course, it's not dead. If people are still riding it, it's not dead. The only thing for us is that the beefy 26, we couldn't justify keeping it in production, and we were the last production 26 inch frame left. We still had some last year, but we ended up having to discount some of them to turn the stock. So when you get to that point, that you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
We would love to, but we have to get batches of 100. So if we can't sell more than 100 a year, if we can't sell 100 a year, which we can't, sorry.
Fair enough. All right. Next question, also on the 26 theme. Craig Scullion, Si, do you believe it's possible to achieve all the modern geometry gains if we still use a 26 inch wheel?
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, because you just you could build a Rocket Max shaped bike or a rocket shaped bike, but with less BB drop and and a longer head tube for to run 26 inch forks, and you would get all of those advantages because the advantages are intrinsic in the layout of the bike. It would just be quite a lot rougher ride in the rough stuff, and you'd probably find it was a bit harder to load the tires going into the corners and things like that. But no, you get if you built a 1300 wheelbase 63-degree head angle bike with a 450 rear end and just kept the bottom bracket height sensible and put 26 inch wheels in it, it'd be rad. But you might buy it, Craig, but nobody else would.
Fair enough. All right. Merlin Shearer, how about a drop bar, fat wheeled gravel bike?
Drop bar, fat wheeled gravel bike. Yeah, the gravel thing's interesting because I've been really enjoying riding mine actually. Recently, I use the WTB Road Plus tires, like the 47mm 650B ones but they're tubeless and they kind of float along and they're really nice. Yeah, so I definitely see that, and I get personally I get on with flared drops better than anything else, but I don't generally get on with drop bars anyway, so that's probably like more to do with me than gravel bikes. But yeah, no, all of that kind of stuff is really good and it's really interesting. It's a really interesting part of the market, and it's something that a couple of us at Cotic have sort of taken more of an interest in over over the last couple of months.
All right, I'm just trying to find. There's a question in here somewhere, and I can't find it. But basically, they were asking, why is there not an XL flare?
An XL flare? It was a. It was partly a development thing, and it was partly sort of a decision along the lines of suitability, in terms of who would ride that size, bike. When we were developing the flare, to get the shock where we needed it for the kinematics, ended up needing this really, really big shock mount on the large, and the XL would have looked even bigger, and we actually struggled to get it through ISO testing because the leverage on this massive shock mount that was so far offset from the down tube was really really struggling. So when we got the large through ISO testing and the small through ISO testing, therefore validating the small, medium and large, it had taken so long to get to that point. We just said, right, okay, we're just going to go into production with these 3 sizes. And then we kind of got busy with other things ultimately. But I think it just comes down to that thing, is when you get into XLs, you should probably try 29-inch wheels. The Flare Max is probably a better solution for you. So it was partly that. And partly that we just didn't get to the bottom of making that particular size work because of the way that frame packages.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. We've got one here based on your response, I guess, to the geometry stuff. So this is from Stephen Housel. Says, who would you say is the most innovative bicycle engineer, past or present? Says, wee bit cheeky to say the industry is catching up with Cotic. To be fair, everyone is catching up with Tessa Rojo and Chris Porter. But I guess that depends on what you think the right answer is.
Well, Cesar Rojo and Chris, hands up. Those guys definitely started the long thing, and it was Chris who got me going down the line of long shot. I went to it. He came up and did a tech talk, and I went along and we had a chat. And I've got a lot of time for Chris. I really like him, and I enjoy having chats. But the key was that this was back in 2015, and I rode his Geometron around a dark car park. But ultimately, the penny that dropped that night was it just felt like a bike. I just realised I needed to tear down all of the preconception walls in my bike. I've been a bike designer for 10 years head, and try some of this stuff, and that was the big step. So those guys, yeah, they're innovators for sure. I say yes. I'm probably being a little bit cheeky saying the industry is catching up with Cotic, but in 2018, when we first launched the Flare Max, you could probably count Cotic, Mondraker, and Geometron as the only 3 people who are doing 500 plus mil reach bikes for XLs. And even though we're small, I do consider us mainstream.
Yeah. Okay.
We're just a small bike company. We're not niche. We're not weird. We don't make weird bikes. We use steel, but we actually make relatively conventional bikes in terms of the marketplace. We make a 160 mil enduro bike. We make a long travel hardtail. We make a gravel bike. We do them in a very Cotic way, but they're not weird products.
Yeah, you're not trying to appeal to the edge cases necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we're building sort of rigid space frame, sort of flex suspension bikes like a Jones or something like that, or something like totally left field like that. Not that that's not a cool thing. I've got this is another person I've got a lot of time for, but so I do feel that we made a step a long time before other people did.
Yeah.
But I also feel that I can't ride Chris's bikes. It's the whole too much thing for me. As I tried going as far as that, and maybe not quite that far, but I was on the way, and I didn't get on with it. I couldn't make the bike work. So for me, that I've gone as far as I want to.
Yeah.
So Chris and Cesar are innovators for sure, and I'd love to be able to spend like some time chatting to Cesar because I've never met him.
So would it be one of those guys that you'd say is the most innovative bicycle engineer? Who would you, if you had to pick one?
I don't know, because those guys back in the day were just coming up with all sorts of crazy stuff out of nothing because they had no building blocks. They had nothing to do it with. They had to basically make it all themselves. So there's a lot of guys back in the day. Keith Bontrager I'm a big fan of Keith Bontrager. There's a bunch of guys back then who were doing and there's a load of guys back, doing probably the most innovative guys. Here's the thing, and I did get this off Keith, and that is going to be it. But probably the most innovative guys are the guys at Shimano who make the Dior group set.
Okay.
Because they take the crazy, amazing functionality of XTR that the propeller heads come up with, and then they somehow make it so you can buy a rear mech for 40 quid.
Yeah, that's hard. That's really hard.
That's really, really hard. That is really hard.
Yeah.
And they will have to design entire machines and factories and ways of doing things to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say probably those guys more than any one frame designer.
All right. Again, I'm hunting for a question here because I know it's in this list because it came in on social as well. There it is. James Gibson would like to know, I'm going to uni this year to study mechanical engineering. How would you then recommend getting into the bike industry once I've graduated? And
don't get into the bike industry when you graduate.
Well, yeah, both of us have gone that route eventually, right? We both studied mechanical engineering and both ended up in the bike industry, but definitely not straight away.
No. It's really hard to get, I get this question a lot. It is really hard to get good training and a good engineering grounding in the bike industry. There's some really great engineers and some really great people in the bike industry, but they did not start there. So my suggestion would be study your degree, enjoy it, pay attention on the design lectures, because that creative spark of design is what sets you apart. There's a bunch of people who will be on your course who you'll be cursing because they'll be easily getting first because they're really good at maths. But get them in a design lecture and watch them flounder. Be creative. That's the thing that sets you apart. And get a job with a big company with a good graduate training program. Get something you're interested in for sure. I worked in trains for like nearly 10 years. And it was really interesting and really diverse. And I learned more in my first 5 years out of university about being an engineer than I ever did at university.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So just get a good training program, ask questions, get involved. And when you feel like you're in a position where you know a bit more what you're doing and you've got some tools, some engineering tools, then that's the time to start looking for a job in the bike industry.
All right. That is a comprehensive answer, but I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So J. Poe, the entrepreneur, says, if you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be?
That's super hard because I have made mistakes along the way, but I've made a lot. But I've made some good decisions as well, and I'm really happy with where I've got to. So it's kind of hard to have any regrets if you like where you've ended up. Um, so, um, yes, that's it. I think maybe learning more about being better at planning earlier would have helped. Because having a focus and a goal and some backed up by some numbers and some thought is the thing that got us from 3 people in 2015 and to 8 people today and 3 times the turnover and all of that kind of stuff. It wasn't an accident. I just got a plan and did it.
Yeah, but if you'd been a planner 15 plus years ago when you started it, you might not have started it.
No, definitely not. No, exactly, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's a real dichotomy. I really like where we've got now, and so in some ways I kind of think, well, it'd been nice to get here 10 or 5 years earlier, but no, it's I'm definitely not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's hard to have regrets if you like where you've ended up.
Yeah, happy days. All right, John Stanyon would like to hear your thoughts on linkage forks. Yeah, and a Solaris Maxx owner, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Thoughts on linkage forks, and would you ever spec a bike with them?
I don't think you can actually buy any anymore now. Trust have gone pop. Can you?
I don't know. Yeah, I've not seen any.
I tried the Trust forks, the Shout, the long travel one last winter. It was amazing in some ways and frustrating in others, but it was really interesting. But ultimately, the main issue they had is that everyone who saw the bike was a little bit sick in their mouth.
Including me. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So linkage forks have got some really interesting properties, but I just can't see people buying them on a mass basis. They just look too weird, and ultimately, if you're spending this much money on a product, you want it to look nice. It's a very bold person who buys purely on function.
Yeah.
Telescopic forks are pretty damn good these days. So it's like in any industry. It's like, the combustion engine versus electric cars. It's solar power versus burning coal. It's all of the the established technology, because it's refined to the nth degree, is really hard to usurp.
Yeah. Be interested to see where they go. All right, we'll start wrapping up. We're going to call this the quick fire round.
Okay.
And first one of these quick fire questions: what hasn't been invented that you wish would hurry up and be invented?
I don't know. I'm not that much of a visionary. That Shimano gearbox pattern that just surfaced, that nobody at Shimano in the UK seemed to know anything about either. That would be interesting, because if Shimano actually properly do a gearbox, that would be something to be interested in.
Oh yeah, I missed that. That was in the questions actually. Gearbox bikes and your thoughts on those, whether you've been tinkering.
I've had a play with it over the years, but none of the gearboxes are good enough yet. That's why I think Shimano doing it is exciting.
Yeah.
Because it probably would be.
Okay. Next quick fire question. One thing you wish you knew 10 years ago.
Oh, God. One thing I wish I knew 10 years ago.
We're going to call this the slow fire round.
Oh, I don't know. That comes back to the whole no regrets answer. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. One thing you wish cyclists would stop doing.
Using Strava?
Okay, not a fan.
No, not publicly anyway. I get it for logging rides and stuff like that, but it just causes more trouble than it's worth for mountain biking. In terms of access and and people not understanding our rights of way and countryside and all of that kind of stuff and conflict. Forget about Strava can go away.
All right. One thing you wish cyclists would start doing.
Um, I don't know. That's a really tricky one. I don't know. Being less tribal. We all ride bikes. We're riding bikes in the dirt. It's fun.
You mean being more friendly, chattier on the
Yeah,
trails?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like sort of, calling road riders dickheads because they don't ride mountain bikes and all of that kind of stuff. It's like just yeah, we all ride bikes. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And then last quickfire question: finale or golfy?
Oh man, you just picked my two favourite places in the whole world to ride a bike. Oh my God. Oh man. Oh, I can't choose that. I don't know. For riding, golfy probably edges it for the kind of riding I like. But
Favorite trail at the golfy?
um, it depends how I'm feeling, to be honest. Um, the rebuilt New York was bloody amazing when we went up and did it with Cathro.
That was in incredible condition that
Yeah.
day, wasn't it?
Lone Wolf, when it's running well, is just makes me giggle like a schoolgirl at the bottom of it. So yeah, probably Lone Wolf.
Yeah. All right. And but
Um,
then finale is going to edge it on temperature, gelato, pizza,
Uplifts.
uplifts,
Ocean.
sea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a lot of things going for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The food and the atmosphere and everything is just completely amazing in finale, and the riding's like next level as well. But it just the riding in finale beats me up. I can ride more days in Scotland than I can ride in finale before my arms are hanging off.
Yeah. True. But that's because you're spending more time pedaling up, I suppose, and less time going down, maybe.
So now there's an element of that, but finale is rough and fast, whereas golfy is steep and tech. So it is definitely a different thing. I think that's my feeling
Yeah.
anyway. We'll find out when they build that chairlift.
Yeah. True. Fingers crossed. Cool. Well, we're going to leave it there because we've been going on for a little bit over an hour, but hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. Si, thank you so much for your time this evening. I hope you've enjoyed a couple of ciders and a bit of a chat about bikes.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thanks, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Nice one. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Like I say, I hope you've enjoyed it. If we didn't get to your question, then I'm sorry. We did have a lot for this, which is awesome. But we're going to have more lives coming up. So keep your eyes peeled for those. Subscribe to this channel. Check us out on downtimepodcast.com for all the audio podcasts. Give us a follow on social media at Downtime Podcast. And then, next week on the audio version of the podcast, we're going to be talking to a couple of the guys from PNW Components about bike design. So less the engineering side and more the design side. So that should be something a bit new and a bit different for you. So, all right. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. And, look after yourselves and we'll see you soon.